I'm very pleased to be here. I'm going to talk about e-teaching. When we speak about online education, a lot of emphasis is put on e-learning. Also, we are hosted by the e-learning center, and we speak all the time about e-learning. And I would argue that we give too little attention to the aspect of e-teaching. This is not the way to go here. The structure of my presentation will be, I will first outline some problematic assumptions, and then I will argue about the centrality of teachers, go on to try to explain why so many teachers, professors in universities are reluctant to utilize the digital technologies nowadays, and I will end up with some suggestions of how to encourage the efficient and effective use of the digital technologies in learning teaching systems. So let's go on to some of the problematic assumptions, problematic and even wrong assumptions. First of all, there is an assumption that the digital natives, the ones that were born with the mouse in their hands, know how to study through the digital media. And I put a question mark. Do they? They know how to download music files, they know how to play with the computers, they know how to do many things with the computers, but not necessarily how to study through the capabilities of the computers. I put a quotation from the Educational Testing Service of the United States, where they have designed a special literacy exam for computer literacy. They wanted to put it as part of the SAT. At the end, it was decided not as an essential part of the SAT exam, but as a separate. Many universities ask their students to take it. And at the beginning of their test, they ask, you students can text message and download music files, but can they problem solve and think critically in a digital environment? Today's students are a part of a technology-savvy generation, but they are often still at loss when it comes to using their critical thinking and problem-solving skills in a digital environment, a skill identified as information and communication. This is how they call their test. So this is one of the questions. The second one is digital natives want to study, not only know how to study, but want to study through the digital media. Is it true? If I take my personal son, as an example, he finishes now, completes the first degree in psychology and communication at Ben-Gurion University in Israel. They have in all of their courses sites and they use the computers, but by no way most of their study is not completed and not conducted through the computers. And since they are young, they like very much the social environment of the university, which is not less important than getting information and constructing knowledge. So I would say that most of the traditional age students, though they are very competent with computers at a certain degree, are not really willing to study all of their studies and to substitute their seminars, auditoria, lectures, and classrooms to an online setting. Third problematic assumption. Most students are able to navigate their studies autonomously. Begonia is not now here, but here, yes. We wrote an article about this problem. It's also quite a wrong assumption that most of students are able to navigate their studies by themselves. And I know when I teach graduate students at Tel Aviv University, for example, and I give them the freedom to choose seminar titles after we speak about what should be included in the work, many of them tell me, give me examples and names of works that we should do, guide us exactly how it should look, do that and do that. My experience is, as I grow older, and I'm an educationalist, so basically I'm also more pessimist about it, but most students and adults are not willing and not able to navigate their studies autonomously. So the whole assumption that now the new media gave an opportunity to put the teachers on the side and not as the sage on the stage is something that we really have to question. Some more problematic assumption. Students should be in the center of the learning teaching process. And I take something from a colleague from psychology that he was talking about children and the whole pedocentric theories. And he said it's part of the problems of raising now little children, putting them too much in the center. They should be in their place, not in the center. And I would argue the same thing about students. Students should be in their place. And in any learning, teaching process, there are teachers and students, and each of them have a very important role. So I really disagree with all this centrality of students in teaching processes, and particularly in online setting, because they cannot navigate their studies by themselves. And in order to choose between alternatives, you first have to know what are the alternatives. And as younger you are, the less you know about alternatives. And if you're a novice in academia, so you also do not know so much about alternatives. So the whole issue of centrality is really with a big question mark. The role of teachers in the digital age is to be mainly guides on the side. I already said that I totally disagree, and this is actually the basic theme of my lecture today. It is important to transfer all or most of the learning activities to an online environment. Is it? I like very much the books of Douglas Adams. I think a few weeks ago there was a day of the towels that celebrated Douglas Adams, and his first book was on the Hitchhiking Guide to the Galaxy. And there is the largest computer ever created for, I think, over 7 million years, trying to calculate the answer for the essence of our living and here on the Earth. And before Earth explodes, the answer is found, and it's 42. But somehow, the question to the answer was lost. So a new computer is actually invented in order to find the question to this answer. And why I am giving it as an example, because it seems to me that exactly the same thing happens with the computers and the technology. Many people say technology is the answer, but what are the questions? And I think part of the problem of utilizing the technologies is exactly that the questions and the problems that they should solve, they should serve, are not clear at all. And I'm kind of also referring to what Stone said this morning, that to formulate goals and to formulate tasks, clear tasks, it's not an easy thing. So it's not so obvious that you should use the technologies for everything. And you should explain why. And also while staying here in the eLearn Center, sometimes we ask some of the groups, what are the main goals of your study? So it's not enough that you use technology in this and that setting, but what was the purpose of doing this study, and what was the purpose of finding the answers to these questions? Now about centrality of teachers. I know that Stone, you referred to knowledge, but transferring knowledge and constructing knowledge, I refer to it as information. The new technologies obviously gave us access to boundless information, to oceans of information. But there is a huge difference between access to information and knowledge construction. So the fact that each of us has the opportunity to get whatever information we want does not mean that we are able to construct meaningful knowledge by accessing the computers. And I read in one of the articles for forecasting the future professions in 20, 30, 40 years. And one of the leading future professions is going to be people that will aggregate relevant knowledge for various people that need it. And this is going to be a specific profession, very needed and prestigious profession, that they will have knowledge in given fields, and they will provide it to policymakers in this field, because otherwise you are drawn in the oceans of information. And knowledge construction is always guided, always, throughout history. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and others, always guided by teachers, experts, and tutors. If children would be able to study by themselves, so already when we had books and encyclopedias, we could have sent them to study at home through books and encyclopedias. But we still teach them in classrooms with teachers. So students at elementary school, high school, also at university, are really constructing their knowledge through help. And the tutorial system in Britain and in the Anglo-Saxon world, that they have very few tutors and they construct their knowledge, is something that is kind of worthwhile talking about. Most learners are unable to conduct their studies autonomously. I said it also already by the questions and the underlying premises that should be kind of questioned. Online teaching differs meaningfully from traditional teaching. It really does. So it does not go automatically that a very proficient, good, excellent teacher in a classroom setting can transfer immediately his knowledge and his ways of teaching to online setting. He needs guidance, and it's a very different kind of competency. The computer literacy of most teachers is basic and lacking at elementary school, high school, and also at universities. And the roles and goals of technologies in teaching learning processes is vaguely defined. I already said about it something. Why so many academic, now I will relate only to teachers in the academic world, to professors. Why so many academic faculty are reluctant to use the information technologies right now? I wrote an article on it, on this theme. And I put the main points out here. First of all, the whole idea of distributed teaching responsibility. Yesterday, the rector of WOC talked about that he realized how much different the role of a professor at a regular university is from the role here. And the professor at a regular university has all the responsibilities, defining the theme of the classroom, finding the learning materials, evaluating the student, teaching, and so on. And in a distance teaching environment, it is very different. He referred to a film industry, but you can take other metaphors. When the first large-scale distance teaching universities were established, the British Open University in 1969, and followed by UNED and Ferran Universiteit and the Israeli Open University in Athabasca in Canada, and in the Far East is the Indira Gandhi University and the Open Universities in China, which teach currently 2 million to 3 million students. So it's kind of not 30 or 40 or 50,000, but I think Indira Gandhi has now 3.5 million students, and the Open University of China has 2.5 million students. So they are really huge universities. So the whole idea was of an industrial model of distributing the teaching responsibility among many actors, which is not so easy for academic faculty to accept. It's a very different notion. You give your responsibility to other actors. So you have to, and Lord Perry, who was the first Vice Chancellor of the UK Open Universities, in his memoir on the first days of the Open University said that this was part of the reason that some of the faculty that started left, because they were not ready that their teaching responsibility will be distributed and to work within teams. So it's something that should be kind of elaborated and worked on. Need to adjust to teamwork, which is also not so easy for professors. In some academic cultures, mainly like in Germany and some other places, the professors are defined as mandarins. They can do whatever they want. And suddenly you have to work in a team and to listen to somebody else saying that something is wrong here and something should be done and something is not clear. And it's not something that goes on. And by the way, in Ferran Universiteit in Germany, was established in Hagen, they decided that the editing of a text is something for the professors to decide whether they want or they don't want. So, and if they don't want, they will give the text which is far from being perfect, and it is going to be the shame of the professor. But the culture is so strong that the professors can do whatever they want, that you cannot impose on them even editing the text and going through advices. Work overload. We know also through the MOOCs now, which is the new buzzword in the world, but also when we prepare, sometimes I'm ashamed to say in our university we should change it. I'm the Dean of Development and Technology, and some courses takes 3, 4, 5 years to develop, and they are on the shelves, they are already outdated. So it takes a lot of work to put when you do such courses. And this is why when you have to prepare such a class by yourself, if you are not assisted really by others, it is really a big overload, and I read in the Journal of Stanford, which I got, that the professors that started with Daphna Koller and Professor Ng, the first MOOCs in Stanford, says that they worked like 3, 4, 5 times more on the course that they recorded as a MOOC as compared to the classroom. But then they use it as a resource later on. But it's a lot of work. Lack of ongoing support systems is also one of the problems. The technical support, but also not only technical support, pedagogical support, and lack of appropriate compensation. That if you are doing so much more and you are available, you should be available to students. Students ask you something, they expect you that within 24 hours at least, you have to answer them. If not, resend you an email and say if it was lost in the kind of a cybernetic world. So in a way, you should be, I was once in Berkeley when I started to write my book on the digital technologies, and some of the professors said that they closed their emails to students. It was in 1999, many years ago, because they felt that their life is totally, their social life and personal life is vandalized, they even said. So they have to be all the time open to and they don't want to. So it's something that we do not know exactly how to deal with. The lack of appropriate compensation, either by money, by teaching less hours, frontal hours, and so on. What are the future prospects of how to enhance the information technology efficient use? First of all, I think it's mandatory that computer literacy training for teachers, professors should be done systematically in universities, not taken for granted. That you have access to computer, you know how to read your email, and you know how to download some files, then you exactly know how you can teach through the computers. Totally not obvious. And if you lack this knowledge, never were trained for doing it, so it's difficult to adopt it. I know for my son, for example, that most of the professors at his university, how they use the sites of their classrooms, usually for downloading materials, and they sometimes Xerox them in a very bad way, that the pages are kind of not aligned, and some lines are missing, and so on. And the download assignments. This is basically the major things that are done on the site, and you can do many, many more things, but you need to be able to do it, or to be assisted, and to know from whom to acquire this knowledge. Computer literacy training also for students, as I said. It's not obvious that even the savvy generation that were born with the computers know exactly how to use the computers for learning purposes. Developing study materials by professional expert centers. You know, the whole area of curriculum, which is my curriculum planning, that started in the 1960s in the United States and then spread to Europe and other places, started when they realized that the Russian Sputnik was sent in 1957, and they are backward, and then they want very good materials, and they kind of assembled professors from high Ivy League universities to write materials for kindergarten and elementary school. And at the beginning, the notion was that the materials will be so good that they will be teacher-proof, that even the worst teachers will not be able to do something wrong with them. It turned out, when Goodlett and others did a huge study behind the classroom doors, they discovered that the teachers behind the classroom doors do whatever they want. And if you do not engage them in the process of how to use these materials, then they can be the best materials, but they are going to be violated and not taught as you expected them at all. So it's really very, very important. Also, I think in the academic world, we almost do not have professional, we have textbooks, but not study packages, which are prepared by experts that can be used. And the Open University, the British Open University, Athabasca University, my university, I think one of the first missions of these universities was to prepare very good study materials that will be used by all the higher education systems in their own countries. Right now, it is a little bit less because the textbooks have improved greatly, but still, in this, it is textbook, written textbooks, not digital packages. And the digital packages for academic world are still not developed. Establishing ongoing support systems, tremendously important. For many studies conducted in this field, wherever you have support systems, it goes much smoother. Whenever you don't know, teachers kind of try, and after one course decide that no more. They're not going to put more effort by themselves. Utilizing open education resources and MOOCs, of course, after quality screening. The whole idea of collaboration. It's not that the wisdom, the universities have this tendency that all knowledge is kind of, and all expertise is owned by their own staff. And they want to do everything from the beginning. It is not right, because you really can utilize even good MOOCs that were prepared by Harvard and Stanford and MIT and Berkeley and so on. You can utilize them in your learning materials. But I still, my opinion about MOOCs is that it will be either good resource material, or in some cases, good courses that you will be able to substitute in your program. But I don't believe that ever they will be substituting whole study programs, the MOOCs, because students cannot study by themselves, and they need, even in the experience of the open courseware of MIT, that was established, they got money and they wanted to go online, and then they asked the marketing company to evaluate whether they should go, and it was a period when many .com companies and universities, leading universities, had dire consequences and lost a lot of money because they believed that they are going to make a lot of money from these online .com companies, and they were told, don't go into this area, but maybe use this money, because they got it philanthropic money, maybe use this money for academic philanthropy. And this is how the open courseware in MIT started. Now we have the whole OER that is a spreading phenomena. So if you utilize correctly the open education resources after, of course, quality assurance screening, you can cut off a lot of expenses in producing your own materials all the time, because you can use already something that has been done in other places wisely and efficiently. Redefining teaching workload, which is tremendously important. We have in each system the workload defined for professors, how many hours they have to teach per week. Since teaching online, in some cases you have 50, 70 students online, most of the literature says that 20, 25 is the maximum that should allow for good interaction. So you really have to redefine teaching workload, and if you teach such big classes, you have to teach less others, and so on. And clear definition of subject skills that should be taught in an online setting. As I said, obviously in an online university like yours, everything is taught online. But in many universities, they use online just as part of their curriculum. So clear definition of subject skills that should be taught in an online setting is of tremendous importance. Major implication, this is my last slide. E-teaching is an essential coequal of e-learning. This is an article I'm writing now with Albert Sangra. Hopefully we're going to finish it this month. Technological literacy is currently lacking both by students and teachers and should be enhanced. In order for technology to provide efficient and effective answers, clear questions for its use and roles should be defined. Thank you very much for your... this is a book that refers digital, not marketing, but digital technologies in higher education, sweeping expectation, actual effects, in which I try really to explain why currently there is such a huge gap between the expectation echoed since the 90s to this day, but technologies definitely are here to stay and have an even major influence as they have today. Thank you very much.